请收看《唯心世界义工利人天》。
慈航为太平，万千万神来朝礼，共传世界永和平。三六天罡南天来，七二天是天心爱。五代尊者督祖理，五三如来生门开。
In order to identify the different stages of such transfer of national ideals into one individual, I will pass over, but I will summarize very quickly the recent history of South Korea and of its staunch nationalism. And then I will present some of his teachings. I've cut quite a lot of things afterwards. So first point, the genesis of Victory Altar teachings, the development of Korean nationalism and Protestantism. So we all know the social and political problems Korea faced in the 19th century with the Donghak rebellion, etc., against Western influence. And much like in many other countries, in particular in the West, in fact, at the time the Koreans developed at this point a sense of their own unicity that was to grow tremendously under Japanese occupation that, as you know, started in 1905, then turned into a full-fledged colonization from 1910 to 1945. Now, what is most interesting for our purpose here is that during those decades, though it only represented a tiny fraction of the population, barely, not even 1%, newly introduced Protestantism in its evangelical form acted as the major force inspiring and supporting those Koreans who fought against Japanese rule. A fair number of major independentists converted and met regularly with Protestant circles. This religion, Protestantism, was understood as having paved the way in the West for democracy and the independence of nations. So it was viewed as an inspiration and as an ally for the Koreans for what has been called Korean self-reconstruction nationalism. And I take the expression from a very interesting book by Kenneth Wells called New God, New Nation, Protestants and Self-Reconstruction Nationalism in Korea. Now, a new phase of intense nationalism surfaced with the victory of 1945. Then the Korean War broke out, 50, ceasefire 1953, etc. Didn't put an end to the war that is still open, as you all know. South Korean nationalism became synonymous with anti-communism, which has remained a major defining feature of the country. The authoritarian economy, and this is important for Victory Altar, which is a religion against communism. The authoritarian economic policy pursued since the war transformed the country into one of those Asian tigers. And in 2005, South Korea became the 10th world economic power, which is amazing. And this painfully won prosperity boosted national pride that inspired and I summarize here, but what we call now the K-wave. You all know about that, so I skip this. But today, this domestically, if you like, this K-wave, of course, comforts the pride of citizens who rightly boast to be the only people of the region to have resisted century-old attempts at permanent takeover by China and or Japan, and to be the only half of the peninsula to have reached such a level of prosperity and freedom when the other half dedicated itself to military expansion at the expense of the well-being of its citizens. And of course, this military build-up maintains the threat of an attack constantly over the South, and in so doing feeds the anti-communism of South Koreans. Second point, Messiah is Korean, slide number 3. Two of the favorite constructs derived, at the end, the other one, derived from the Bible as taught by Protestants missionaries in Korea, Messianism and millenarism. And Victoria Alta has enthusiastically integrated both Messianism and millenarism into its cosmology. Now, of course, the concept of Messianism exists also in other traditions. We've seen it with Pure Land Buddhism, which is the major trend of Buddhism in Korea, and through, of course, the figure of Maitreya, the Buddha of the future, who in Victoria Alta is synonymous with the figure of Cho, the founder. So he's both the Christian savior and Maitreya. When Messianism was taught in colonized Korea, colonized by Japan, identification with the fate of the Hebrews is said to have been immediate. And decades later, the simile is still in force. The devotees of Victoria Alta hold their founder to be the new Moses. That's how they call him also. And it is said that Korean evangelicals today still strongly identify with the biblical Israel. The term Messianism, as you know, can also be applied to the conviction of a people or a nation that it is endowed with a specific mission, possibly a universal one. And the fervent nationalism of South Koreans today can be seen within this frame. The fact that the small country triumphed over colonization and became such a world power can only be due to its being imbued with a unique salvific power. So you have the next one. And the next one, and the next one, I thought I had skipped. Okay, are you sure you got the short one? Go on, go on, go on. Yes, okay, leave the next one. Yes, okay, that's the one. So at the headquarters of Bucheon, which is the western suburb of Seoul, and this is where the group was founded, we are greeted by a large portrait of Cho, well, you see it here, with the English caption in bold font, "Messiah is Korean." I took the photo. And in much smaller print, the same caption in Hangul. That's for Koreans. So in fact, it's for the whole world to know, Koreans come second. The founder of Victoria Alta was born in 1931. I skip his life. If you want to know everything about his life, you go to read what Massimo wrote on him. He just died in 2004 in jail, the day before he was tried and probably going to be sentenced to death. Massimo loves telling that story, so he wrote about that. Now, since in the monotheistic perspective of Victoria Alta, there cannot be two messiahs, logically, this one Cho had to discard the first one, Jesus, so as to impose himself as the sole valid one. The book, The Science of Immortality, published in 1992, transcribes this teaching in his own voice. He quotes several verses of the gospel to demonstrate what should have been obvious long ago. Jesus was an idiot, an imbecile. And this is particularly visible from Matthew 24, verse 36, when Jesus says that nobody can tell when the end will come, since only the Father knows. But then, how can he be the Son of God if he doesn't even know when the end will come? Oh, well, okay, he did descend from Solomon, but in fact, Jesus was not begotten of the Holy Spirit, because this is biologically impossible. He had a human father, a Roman soldier, who raped Mary. Jesus is consequently a pseudo-Christ, a bastard with a dirty pedigree. I'm quoting, of course. I don't want to go to hell. Even the biblical God is no longer omnipotent because Satan vanquished him 6,000 years ago. You can see fundamentalism creeping here. The only true God could be Korean anyhow, I quote. At last, God has come to Korea and has become the victor. The true God is Victor Christ, for he is the last Adam. God who gives, Christ who gives life, who is to construct a new heaven and earth. And then you go towards Pure Land, but I skip that. Now, next point, the immortality of neo-humans. This book teaches how any individual can dominate the spirits of darkness and mutate into a neo-human. This is the major point that exhibits the Taoist features of the movement, but I'm not going to go into this. For Cho, immortality will result from a proper understanding of a link to blood, that of our ancestors up to Adam and Eve. And I cannot but quote a passage that I particularly like, and I hope you will love it too. Mankind forms only one body. The law of heredity is that of blood. Therefore, the dog begets a dog, the bull a bull, the monkey a monkey, and the rabbit a rabbit. Similarly, God bears God. As the Bible has it, we have a being from God, and our is offspring. Therefore, the human being is God. If there's anyone who insists that the human being is not God, then he's just like the one who insists that the puppy is not a dog. As we have seen above, however, a puppy is a dog because the offspring of a dog is a dog. Similarly, the child of God is God. Therefore, all mankind is God. We humans are not animals. I skip all kind of stuff. So now the genealogy of the chosen nation. Our friend from Korea, Professor Lee Gwing-won, wrote that Koreans are said to take great pride in being a consanguine race. I'm quoting him, and to believe that they form the most tightly knit community in the world. And he goes on, such strong national conscientiousness resulted in fostering a strong sense of the chosen people. What is most interesting is that in order to support his teaching of racial purity, Cho situated the origin of the Korean race in the Bible itself through a pro bono exploitation of the lost tribe mythology, inscribing his scenario within the historical Israel that, as I noted before, evangelical Koreans imagine they have been duplicating in their own national odyssey in South Korea. Koreans, in fact, and I'm telling you, are the authentic biological descendants of the tribe of Dan, the son of Jacob, and this is in Genesis 49. And this tribe is supposed to have left Canaan around the year 1200 before Christ. If it is no longer mentioned in the Bible, that's one of the lost tribes, it's because it fled to the east to escape Satan and protect the real Messiah that he was missionized to bear. So every time they present their religion, as they did again last June, the members of Victoria Altar display the map of their exodus from Canaan to Persia, then north to the Altai regions, Mongolia, and then finally to Korea. The route proves that Koreans derive from a Nordic lineage, not a Chinese one, as some would have it, in order to identify them as just mere offspring of the Chinese. The Koreans' lineage derived from the Altaic family, but originally from the Hebrews. And linguistically, Korean is supposed to be an Altaic language with a lot of resemblance with Hebrew. And the incarnate proof of this linguistic genealogy is the famous figure of Tangun, written either Tangun, Dangun, because it's the same in Korean, whose name clearly identifies him with the Danites, that is, the son of Dan. And Tangun is the famous progenitor of Korea, who was precisely exhumed from ancient lore at the turn of the 20th century, at the time of the construction of Korean nationalism, to consolidate the anteriority of the Koreans and replace the Chinese founding hero, Kija, who was revered until then. So the itinerary of the Danite tribe to Korea was divinely ordained to allow for the incarnation of the true Son of God in the most extreme eastern part of Eurasia. And you usually have also a map of Manchuria and Korea, the true land of God. And this is where paradise will soon be open. And I'm almost finished. Now, Cho, divine power at work. So his overwhelming power allows him to protect his people even beyond death, and in doing so to save the rest of mankind as well. He summarized his agenda in 5 great pledges, which are displayed at the entrance also of Victoria Altar's headquarters. And they are also termed the 5 covenants of a prophet like Moses. First one, okay, that's the map of the true land of God. Next. Okay, that's him after death. Is that another one? Okay, well, that's him after death. Go on. Yeah, that's okay. That's the itinerary. You see that they skipped China. They didn't have a GPS at the time, so they took the longest route. Go on. Okay, that's them with a statue of Dangun. And next one. Yes, these are the 5 covenants. And I shall sweep away communism from the surface of this earth. I will prevent typhoon. I will stop rain in the rainy season. I will make Korea to have an abundant harvest annually. I will root out the potential threat of war from Korea forever, etc. Conclusion. The success of Cho Hing-sang, there used to be some 400,000 members, so that's quite a large group. When he died, whereas he had taught immortality, a lot of people left, so it went down to 100,000. We don't know exactly how many now. But they're still around and come to Cessna every year, so there are still some around. But anyways, so his success comes from his capacity to formulate teachings with prophetic values perfectly geared to respond to the expectations of his fellow citizens concerning the most pressing issues in the final decades of the 20th century. Well, now it's a bit different, of course, in Korea, but social and economic problems such as poverty, almost forced labor in factories or in the fields until at least the 1980s, harsh climate, political issues, and the communist threat most strong at the time, of course, of the foundation of the religion during the Cold War in 1981, and that has not abated since. Cho promised his fellow citizens that they could solve these problems by themselves, thanks to rigorous spiritual and moral discipline, what you could call cultivation, I guess, and thanks to his own power that he conveyed to them through the famous dew you saw on the photo. They can behold the earthly paradise that he has been preparing for them, they can see this paradise in the prosperity and in the top ranking of their nation, economically and culturally, thanks to the key wave, because now the nation is hailed internationally. Everybody talks, and mainly in Europe, in fact, and in particular in France, about South Korea. We have masses of students studying Koreans, wanting to go to Korea, hundreds, thousands. I published a book to study French, for French beginners who study Korean, and it was a bestseller, and it has been a bestseller for years. Now, in tight osmosis with those of his country, Cho's messianism and millenarism join those of oppressed or previously colonized peoples throughout the world. Many peoples who were colonized or evangelized by Christians have drawn from the Bible and the stories of the missionaries the good news of the second coming of the Messiah, and they have elaborated syncretic spiritual systems similar to the one promoted by Victory Alta. The script is Christian, but the contents are indigenous. They announce victory over the oppressors, their destruction, their expulsion from the motherland, and the return of the ancestral world, necessarily paradise-like. The originality of Victory Alta and of some other religions of similar syncretic construction in the region lies in the fact that their messianism and millenarism extend beyond the strictly speaking ethnic frame of victory to affirm the infinite superiority of their own nation over the others and to imagine the conquest of the world culturally and spiritually. In order to achieve this, the first stage consists in negating the superiority of Christianity as understood in the West, while at the same time borrowing most of their doctrines from it. The most important step is to demonstrate the imposture of the Christian Jesus, a fake Messiah, to prepare for the second step, the self-proclamation of the founder of the new religion, that he or she is the true universal Messiah. Reverend Moon claimed he was the true Son of God since Jesus had failed his mission, which was to get married and have children. Park Tae-soon of the Olive Tree called Jesus the son of Satan, and Cho, we have talked about him, mocks him as an idiot, a bastard with a dirty pedigree. Clearly, what these Korean messiahs want to prove is that their until now inferior nation is taking its revenge by belittling the God of the foreign powers. At the same time, they retain those features of the Christian belief system that can be of use for them, such as the chosen nation concept and that of monotheism, because it is instrumental in sustaining their own personal authority. In a post-colonial deviant strategy, a form of symbolical hijacking, they take hold of the Bible, the master book in a large part of the world, affirm they make better use of it, and turn it to their advantage, making fun of those Westerners who did not understand it correctly. This is one more proof of the conformity of Victory Altar to a sort of general evangelical mood in Korea, whilst the author of the book I mentioned concludes his study of New God and New Nation. He concludes this on Korean messianism, and he says that Protestant Koreans today see themselves as the truly moral nation who can teach, quote, the decadent and spiritually innovated Western nations. They are the new Israel, the nation God will use to spread renewal throughout the world. And my final paragraph, this universal missionizing goal sets Victory Altar and its fellow Protestant Koreans apart from other messianic peoples. For example, in a region like North America, that was far more aggressively colonized and evangelized than Korea, that furthermore was never, yes, I saw that, but my predecessor took far more time than I did over these 0 minutes. Korea was never colonized by Christians, and also evangelization was never forced to people. Many syncretic religions were founded, but to the best of my knowledge, whenever the founder declared himself to be a prophet or a messiah, he did not spit on the biblical Jesus, but simply announced he was his incarnation for the second coming, or a new incarnation altogether. One doesn't see in their agenda either the desire to reign beyond the confine of their tribal group, and so Korean messiahs are thus of a specific and fascinating kind. Thank you.
So, thank you, Bernadette, particularly for your new version of the ontological argument. You are still active in the market for Messiah if you send your followers to Chesnur. So that's something everybody should meditate. The proof you exist is you come to Chesnur. That's, in short, what she really said. So, if you burn for, you have a burning desire of drinking tea, you can go, because there are 45 minutes of tea break. But those who don't want to drink tea can stay here for, I would say, 10-15 minutes of questions and answers. So everybody wants to drink tea, or there are questions? Jason?
Thank you all for your presentations. This was a really enjoyable session. I have a couple of comments and perhaps questions for Bernadette. Also, I had one, yeah, I suppose it's more like a comment for Michael. So sorry if you'll indulge me with all of these questions. I'll try to make them brief. A slight correction for your observation about Korean Buddhism. The dominant Buddhism in Korea is known as Chogyejol, which is a Zen Buddhism. It's not a Pure Land Buddhism.
A quick remark about the paradise, yeah.
Okay. In fairness, though, they do do some subtle hat tips and nods to Pure Land Buddhism. There is a little bit of mixing, so I understand how.
In Victory Altar, it's
right.
full of Pure Land Buddhism.
Right. I see what you're saying. Yeah. Also, I'm kind of wondering if some of what you've attributed to connections or borrowings from Christianity within Victory Altar arguably are things that there may be borrowing from Buddhism. Not Buddhism, sorry, Judaism.
Well, there's the Lost Tribe story, which is transmitted by Christians, but it's mostly, I didn't have time to develop this, but
Sure.
The message is extremely Christian in love one's neighbor, etc., etc. So it's really the Jewish Christian tradition.
Right.
They quote the Bible all the time, but the two testaments, Old Testament, New Testament,
Right.
constantly.
And I would say their church service very much is a Christian modeled church
I don't
service.
Know. I went to this. Have you been to this?
I was there with you that day.
Oh, yeah. I wouldn't say that it was kind of strange to me, but I wouldn't place it as Protestant anyway. Yeah.
Right.